For now, though, let's turn to South Sudan, where a contingent of Rwandan peacekeepers has been deployed to the Upper Nile state. They're delivering humanitarian assistance to tens of thousands of people who fled the conflict elsewhere in the country. The troops will be stationed in the town of Aburoc, and UN peacekeepers are providing shelter there to thousands of internally displaced South Sudanese. A contingent from the United Nations Mine Action Service is clearing a road to Aburoc to provide a secure delivery. The UN says its major concerns now are the possible outbreak of cholera and diarrhoea.
We are worried that without that assistance there could be an outbreak of diarrhoea and possibly cholera. We've had one case of cholera already, and so the situation for us is the peacekeepers are there very much to support the humanitarian efforts to bring short-term relief to the people there until the rainy season comes, which I think will be in the next, we're looking at about 4 weeks in total.
Well, let's get you more on this story now. I'm joined live from New York by our UN correspondent, Liling Tan. Liling, of course, this is a positive step in the right direction. Just tell us how encouraged the UN is at this stage following the deployment of this first contingent of peacekeepers in South Sudan.
Well, in terms of the deployment, it is an encouraging step indeed, especially when you consider the months of delays in deploying this first wave of the contingent following the Security Council's approval of this deployment. So now what we have is the Bangladesh engineering group on the ground, and one of their first tasks that they are undertaking is to improve road conditions so that supplies and deliveries can be made between the north and south, and they're also readying working and living conditions for the rest of the troops that are due to arrive. So it is progress, but it is a very slow one. And David Shearer, the UN envoy to South Sudan and head of the mission there, said as much on Thursday that the force is slowly taking up position there ahead of contingents due to come from Rwanda and Nepal. So it's getting there slowly but surely, and where the UN is concerned from their vantage point, that is a positive step.
Well, as you say, things are moving slowly but surely, and this is just one positive step forward in a context where there are a series of challenges. What then will the UN be focusing on next in terms of the situation in South Sudan?
Well, the three priority areas for the UN are the political track, the security issues, and the humanitarian track. Now, on the political track, we know the UN continues to push for reconciliation, for both warring sides to work together, for the government of President Salva Kiir to engage and involve Riek Machar's side in the peace process. Now, this, of course, is a key area, key priority area, because the political solution would address all the underlying causes of the security and humanitarian crises. Now, on the security front, as you mentioned, in Aburoc, a team of peacekeepers have been deployed there. In fact, this is a major concern right now for the UN because there's been an uptick in fighting across the country with tens of thousands of people displaced. You mentioned Aburoc, where they're trying to put in place a clean water system, fend off cholera and diarrhea. So that is one of their short-term goals. But remember that the long-term goal here is for a political solution. The UN continues to press for that, but the humanitarian response, that remains an immediate priority area.
And of course, the humanitarian situation really taking place in a situation where people are still under threat from violence. And we've seen the UN peacekeepers, or at least their convoys, come under attack before. Are there concerns for their safety? And just what will they be doing to help aid workers travel safely in areas where people are facing starvation?
Absolutely. The safety of aid workers is a very important area that the UN is constantly monitoring and trying to respond to. Now, part of this regional protection force that's being deployed, they'll be able to respond to many of these concerns, many of these areas where humanitarian efforts are underway, where aid workers are trying to assist the displaced. But some of these troops will also step in so that existing peacekeepers already familiar with the landscape and the climate can be deployed to these areas outside of Juba, to these areas where there's security threats and humanitarian needs. Remember that the deployment of this expanded force is for the UN to expand the capacity and the capability of its mission, of its peacekeeping mission on the ground, to respond to these security threats and humanitarian needs. So the hope is that they can accomplish this once they have the full contingent deployed.
Indeed, we'll have to be patient as we see this process unfold. Thanks very much to Liling Tan, speaking to us there from the UN headquarters in New York.